So I guess as I'm starting this, the fourth talk in this month's series, I I'm myself feeling overwhelmed with how much I'm asking you to learn. Um, Please know I wish there was an easier way. I've said this before, but the truth is that in order to have an emergence, there is no way to have an emergence without first feeling that pressure about not knowing. And I don't mean just a momentary pressure. I mean it hits you. Oh my, there's so much here. There's so much to learn. In this talk, I hope to give you something where there is a lot to learn, but it's simpler to understand. Um, and really, it is more about the nature of a difficulty that many people have, um, and what most commonly is referred to as addiction. Now, if you're like most normal people, immediately meanings for that word come to mind, most of which are dictionary style meanings. Single points, a collection of them, and they say addiction is this, this, and so on. If you get into the diagnostic manual, um, it's still a mess because although they do a better job at going this, and they also say a few not this is, and so on. But quite honestly, um, it's not defined clearly. It's not science. It's more like what somebody writing a dictionary would say about what the word means. Okay, so we talked about my first experience with a self-directed emergence, a time where I chose to do things to which led to giving me an emergence, and then we talked about how that came to be something, a way of doing emergence on myself, and then I have taught that to a few other people called Cycles of Three, and I gave you an example of probably what was the most difficult of all the injuries I had as I came into learning these things, which was an injury of abandonment, which made me unable to leave horrible relationships. Um, which isn't to say that I had no part in it. Of course, my part was that in some way I was stuck there, and someone would have said that I was addicted to these people. Um, well, yeah, okay. So I would not. I would use a word that's in that pile, and I will tell you what it is, but I would not. Then I gave you what I thought would be a simple, straightforward, practical list of ways to find put somebody in the general category of a wound. Vivid recall of a painful event being, the number one, and a number of those things. Hating an ordinary life event, underreacting to a violent event. These are not hard to understand, but they're complicated. And really, the easiest way to be using that list of 12 block markers would be to simply look at the question and ask somebody. Do you have a time where you can picture yourself hating something like a food? Food is an ordinary thing. Somebody hates it, it's an injury. That's pretty black and white. And this is not in other therapies. It's not, because there's no science to define what a wound is and also what healing is. This is largely what we've been focusing on in these early talks. So in this talk, we're going to talk, as I said, about addiction, and but we're going to start with the word, because if you poorly define a word, then you are going to have very difficult time healing the thing, because what is the wound if it's a very vague general thing, you know? So somebody says, I have I have an issue with self-worth. I have low self-worth. Well, okay, that's a symptom, but a symptom of what? My God, it could be any number. Thousands and thousands and thousands of things can cause low self-worth. You know, perhaps a teacher in kindergarten yelled at you and said that you were stupid. And being a little kid, it got in your head and it stayed for life. Um, I have recently had a few people have injuries with math, and I learned over the years that at math injuries, the first thing to look for is if the person can picture each of the 10 digits, 0 through 9. And I have them imagine a piece of paper and what color it is and so on, and now imagine something to write with, a marker, what color is it? And then I ask them to imagine making, and I pick a number, the 4, and to pay attention where they start. And I watch their eyes, and I watch to see if their eyes are looking as they do it. And I also ask them to not use their hands, because people often have their body, they have it in their body what the shape of a number is. And surprisingly, there are people, usually people who say they're bad at math, can't picture one or more of the 10 digits. Okay, all of this already, so much stuff. Where's the addiction? Okay. So the word addiction will get defined in hopefully what is a clear way for you for the first time. So you hear people say, well, I'm addicted to eating sugar. Huh. No. I'm addicted to overeating. No. I am addicted to watching television or staying up at night or or who knows what. You know, I am addicted to buying shoes. Okay. So now there are, in all of those things, people who overdo those things in ways that they suffer. They have symptoms. Many people have trouble with things that are sweet, and they overeat them, and then there's the self-hate, and then they do it again. And it has a lot of similarities to things like alcoholism, and the way alcoholics they will drink too much, and then they swear off, and they have these symptoms, and they get sick physically, and if you overeat too many sweets, you can get sick, and it isn't the same, but it has a lot of similarities. So what is the difference? What's the difference between saying that you have an addiction to sweets, or cakes, or something like that, candy, and that you have an addiction to alcoholism? So, even as we start, it's an odd thing, but mostly people don't say that alcoholism is an addiction, even though it clearly is. It's alcoholism. And an addict is usually a person who is addicted to, marijuana or cocaine or heroin or fentanyl or amphetamines or, something in the category of drugs. I remember learning when I was new as an addiction counselor that the word drug, and I do not know how to pronounce it, so it's not me. I'm not great at it, and I'm probably particularly bad at French. I can't speak it at all. But there's a French word that's something like drogue or droge or something like that. And that's where the word drug comes from, and it means a fine powder. There's nothing there that says addiction. It just says fine powder. Kind of interesting that sugar is a somewhat fine powder, but really they're talking about a finer powder, like, the way that heroin looks or something like that. So drugs are a powder and alcohol is a liquid, and so there's some difference there. But the things I mentioned, all of those things, alcohol and so on, when people overdo them, it is an addiction. Now, you're listening to the great me, And if you know me a while, you know what I do next. I don't look to prove it to you. What I do next is I ask that you please ask the know-it-all, the great know-it-all over here, for his evidence. Where's my evidence that sugar is not an addiction and alcohol, for instance, is an addiction? Where's the line? Okay, so the two that are one, now you hear that phrase, you're going, oh my God, what is he going to tell us now? Okay. The two that are one, think the barbell. So you think something over here on the bell, and you see the other bell over here, and there's a bar that connects them. The bar is what the two bells have in common, but the bells are at the opposite ends of the bar, and they are completely the opposite end. One of them can be left, but not both of them. One would have to be right if that's the way you're doing it. If you turned it this way, one has got to be up, then the other one must be down. This is the way two that are ones work. So, in this case, the bar we are going to talk about is the word compulsion. And compulsion is a description of an inner experience, and it is also something that very much drives an overreaction to something, some kind of behavior. So let's just say that we're talking about this eating sweets again. There is no doubt in my mind that there are many people who are compelled to eat cakes, candies, etc. And how do I know that that's a compulsion? Well, for one thing, it is that they do it against their will. They're trying to use willpower to prevent it, and the willpower is needed only when you are doing something that's the opposite of your nature. In this talk, that might be the most important thing you hear. Willpower is required only when you are doing something that is going against your natural way of doing things, your nature. So, if your natural way has become, at some point in your life, or now, or whatever, to overeat cakes or candies or so on, even those words a little bit like large, because nobody who eats all those things eats every sweet or every cake or every candy. They have favorites. But they usually, like an alcoholic has favorite kinds of alcohol, they'll do one, they overdo it, they swear it off, they maybe stay off it for a little while, then they switch to another one. And alcoholics frequently do that. When I was younger, drank tequila. I don't know why. I was romanticizing tequila, and I remember overdoing it one night and embarrassing myself, and never again. And I never did drink tequila again. Does that mean I'm not an alcoholic? No, because I just switched to something else that also had the same chemical, ethyl alcohol in it, but it was a different alcohol in terms of what we call it, like bourbon or scotch and so on. So people with sweet compulsions do the same thing. Maybe they eat brownies and they have a thing for brownies or chocolate chip cookies or pumpkin pie with whipped cream on it. Oh, that is horrible. And the people close to me know from some reasons that were somewhat hurtful in my childhood that I didn't get desserts for the most part. But at a certain time of year, Christmas, I would get something. And one of those things that I would get was fruitcake. And every time I say this, people go, oh, I hate fruitcake. Oh, it's awful. But it has a meaning to me. And I have in recent years, Maria gave me a gift, Maria and her friend Jackie. Oh, I love them both. And they sent me a fruitcake. And of course, I'm going, no, I'm doing so well, I don't want to eat it. And I eat a little and it's gone. I eat a fruitcake in a day. Oh, and I was sick. Okay, is that an addiction? No. But I need you to hear that you need my evidence. It needs to be scientifically clear and measurable for this to be as I'm saying. Why is it not an addiction? So, compulsion. I feel compelled to finish the whole pie, right? And people who do this, they have things in common, like putting things in the garbage and then fishing them out the next day. Alcoholics do that too. So you see how there is this overlap, and I keep saying alcoholics do it too. So what am I saying? Remember, the bar connects both of these bells. And on one end of the bar is something which we will look at, which has no name, but it really is compulsion in and of itself. The other side, the other bell, we'll look at and call addiction. And the bar is odd because with compulsion itself, really there's no word on the other side. Addiction and compulsion both are compulsions. Addiction, every addiction includes compulsion. Every compulsion does not include addiction. Now, I haven't told you what the difference is yet. And there's no word for the part of it that's about a compulsion. What is a compulsion? Well, a compulsion is this thing. It's an addiction with something taken away. And an addiction is a compulsion with something added. And this is the pair of opposites. The thing that is not present in compulsions, or not present in the thing which is on this end of the bar, because compulsion's in both of them, and this thing that is present in addiction that then added to compulsion, this thing plus compulsion, makes it an addiction. So, I imagine you're pretty confused and ready to shut this shit off. What is he talking about? This is crazy. I know. Okay. So, first of all, the difference is very simple. And in order for you to see why it's significant, I have to skip away from that for a minute and tell you, how do things become addicting? How do things become a compulsion? Okay, so if you think about any kind of drugs or even alcohol, and if you learn to be a substance use counselor or something, one of the layperson's divisions, and a rough thing that you learn, is that all the drugs and alcohol and things like that can be divided into an upper and a downer. There's a pair of opposite again. An upper and a downer. Now, most people, they kind of learn, okay, cocaine is an upper and alcohol is a downer and heroin is a downer and amphetamines are an upper and so on. Okay, but what do those two words refer to? It's very simple. They refer to that the substance taken by, and this is critical, any person, not just somebody who's an addict, the substance itself causes that person's sense of time to either speed up or slow down in a predictable amount and rapidly. So that's a lot. An upper is something that when you take it, your sense of time speeds up. And a downer is something that when you take it, your sense of time slows down. And if these things can be addictive, they do it rather rapidly. Now, the substance itself causes all people to have the effect of time speeding up, time slowing down. So, surely some of you that are watching this are not recovering alcoholics or drug addicts or something. Some of you will be, very much so. I am. But, many of you will not who are hearing this. And I want you to think about the idea that if you have a glass of wine or a beer and you are watching, you will notice that your sense of time within 4 minutes will smooth out. And it kind of, there's the extra little thing that alcohol does that's a little different from marijuana, that's different from heroin and so on. But the smoothing out is a smoothing out of time. It's more even and it's slower. So the smoothing out has something to do with time slowing down, and that's why these things are called downers. This will happen to anybody who drinks alcohol. Anyone. Every single person. This is important. Now, let's flip over to eating for me, the fruit cake, or for cakes, candies, whatever it is. So, if you give somebody pumpkin pie with whipped cream on it, and there are people who don't like it, but let's say apple pie, like a apple crumb pie, right? A Dutch apple pie. And let's say it's from a world-class chef. Okay. Any people who get a piece of that pie and don't have an injury about eating apples and pie, any person who gets that, no matter who they are and what they are, it does not cause them, the apple pie does not cause them to have their sense of time altered. The apple pie does not cause the sense of time to speed up or slow down. It does not. The alcohol, regardless of who the person is, alcoholic or you don't drink but one glass of wine a year, if you have wine, your sense of time slows down. So, here is this difference in the bells. On this end, where we're talking about things that are compulsions, but they do not have added to it that the substance, the thing itself, causes time to speed up or slow down. They just have this, sometimes a psychology around it, where your sense of time can speed up if you go into the store and you're buying the cake or something. Like if you're about to do what you are seeing in your own mind as the wrong thing, there's a excitement that happens. There's something that happens, but it's not from the substance itself, because not everybody who goes to buy a pie at the supermarket has that kind of excitement and rushes to the store and rushes home and rushes to open it and rushes to start eating it. Now you notice the speed difference. That's important. That is a piece in the pile of what compulsion is, that with compulsion, when you're doing the thing or afterwards, there is a sense of change in your sense of time. But it's not an inherent part of the thing itself, meaning not every single person who does it will have that effect to some degree, a noticeable degree. With alcohol, every person will experience a change in their sense of time, and with say oxycodone, everybody who has an oxycodone or a Xanax will have their sense of time slow down. These are downers. They have different flavors, and meaning not the taste of it in your mouth, but they have different ways that they affect the mind, the psychology. But the thing that is so important to see is it's simply focused around rapidly altering your sense of time. Rapidly, and that the thing itself causes the change. Pumpkin pie, or apple pie, or fruitcake, or any of that does not cause the rapid change in your sense of time. Doesn't cause it. If you have a compulsion, the compulsion has as a part of it that engaging in that thing will affect your sense of time. But Not everybody who buys those things, in fact most people, will not have any of that change in time. It won't even be something noticeable. So here is the beginning of your understanding of compulsion and addiction, and these are things that you will likely encounter with many, many people in your life, and helping people to emerge from these difficulties. It's a big deal. Oh boy, talking about undermining your self-worth every time you do it, and you promise you won't, and then you fail again, and you disappoint people, and so on. Very painful. Um, so, in a sense, what you get addicted to is the predictable change in your sense of time. That's the essence of what's addicting, the predictable change in your sense of time. Compulsion is that feeling of an overwhelming feeling of, I need to do this now, I want to do this now, I need this, right? An abnormally large sense of, I need this now, right? But this difference that we're talking about is that while compulsions and addictions both alter your sense of time in and around them, only addictive things have that effect on every person who does them. The altering the sense of time happens to all people. The altering your sense of time when getting a pumpkin pie, no. So when somebody says that they're addicted to pumpkin pie, that's very technically, but importantly, not an addiction. It's not. And why is it important? Because the treatment is different. The treatment is different. And the main treatment in emergence is what? To get a person to be able to picture, vividly picture, what is happening to them. And to root out where there is a blankness, and to get the person to be able to see at first that the blankness exists, and then to help them to fill in the blankness with some visual material. This is a big deal. So when I spoke about cycles of 3, this is what's happening. I am pushing, pressuring, I pressured myself about my age, a mental thing, and my emotion, my spiritual state, and so on. And I began the whole process by saying, I know it's not you, this thing, this person, that's causing this pain. This is a lot of effort. And yet, in those things, I'm not looking at something that's an addiction. I'm looking at something that I got startled about, and I feel afraid when I'm around that thing. A high level of fear, an unnatural level of fear. In the case of what we're talking about, people often ask, is an addiction an injury? And I'm not going to answer that in this talk, because it's so complicated. I have things to say, but not now. So I am not going to say whether a compulsion and or an addiction is an injury. But I simply want you to understand the nature of the difference between a compulsion and addiction. A compulsion is something where you do experience that sense of time, rapid change, but the thing itself does not cause it in all people. Whereas with an addiction, whatever that is, whoever takes that is going to experience that rapid change in their sense of time, either speeding up or slowing down. All people, because the thing itself causes the change. Whereas with a compulsion, the compulsion is the part of it that kind of wraps up an ordinary thing in a compulsion blanket, and that compulsion causes you to have an unnatural reaction, a change in your sense of time when you think about doing that thing, getting that thing. So when you look at the picture, this altering time drawing, now I'm skipping to the drawing because we've been talking about this quite a while. When you're looking at the drawing, what you see in the drawing is 3 different scales of movie film. And you can see the little orangey things with the numbers on them. There are frames. And then in between is the acetate or whatever, the the material that holds each frame in the thing, and it has like the little holes, the sprocket holes, and so on, where it goes through the movie projector. Okay, so when you look at it, you see the one in the middle, that's the normal size. The one at the bottom, the time drags out. So each picture, there's more of it. And it's smoother, and it lasts longer. And you don't really have to work very hard at all to see it. But it's not very exciting. It's slow. And if you look at the one at the top, look at how many frames of life go by in that period there. And I mean, holy cow, you know, in the little space there where it has the, you know, the one at the top, it's got that the time is 7, the one in below it is 2.3 frames, and the one at the bottom is not even a whole frame, it's 0.7 frames. And so this is the kind of difference that happens with both addiction and compulsion. But addictions, the thing itself causes this change in all people. All people feel this kind of time change, speed up or slow down, right? And so that substance can, not automatic, can be addictive. The substance itself is addictive. But things like pies, cakes, candies, things like that, and so on, buying shoes. Now I know, you know, the woman in South America with 3,000 shoes, yes, that's bizarre, and it is a compulsion, and I know women have told me they have shoe fetishes or whatever they talk about, right? And they buy a lot of shoes, and it goes far beyond what they would need. They collect them. They have a shoe collection. Okay. And they buy the same shoe in multiple colors, blah, blah, blah. I understand these things. It is a compulsion. But does everybody who buys shoes feel that feeling? Of course not. Not at all. Some people, they buy work boots, and it's just completely practical, and, you know, okay, so good, I get new boots, but there's no feeling of a sense of time changing because you bought new boots. So, hopefully this has become a clear thing about addiction, compulsion, or I've probably reversed them. I can't remember my hands where they were anymore. But, you know, addiction and compulsion and how they have things in common. Compulsion has that compelled feeling, but they also have something one has and the other one doesn't, which is that the substance itself, the activity itself, causes a change in a person's sense of time. So now, just before we go, let me just pick out a couple of other things, because I've been talking about things that we ingest or drink. Okay, what about things like gambling, sex, things like that? Okay, so if a person buys a lottery ticket and they are on TV and looking to see if they got the number, they will experience time speeding up a little. It will not be as large as a person who is a gambler, has a gambling addiction, but it will speed things up. So gambling is an addiction. The idea of watching a horse race or, you know, betting on something, things like that. Most people who watch these things will will have their sense of time altered by the thing itself. So, gambling, yes. Addiction. Is it a compulsion? Yes. But it's a compulsion, plus it causes a change in people's sense of time. Just think about a horse race and all the people that are there. Yes, there are a few people who are bored, but most of the people who were there were a car race or, you know, sports events, things like that. Those kinds of things, they can addict, because the thing itself causes a change in your sense of time. But things like overeating in general, not so much. Because the person can have all those symptoms that look like an addiction because it has the compulsion parts. But those foods eaten by somebody else, no, they're not going to do that. The food itself doesn't cause that change. Another thing that's in that category can be sex, because having an orgasm and doing cocaine with some of the drugs, right? Those things have a lot in common. And one of the things that they have is they speed up or your sense of time. And so the thing itself causes a change in your sense of time. So yes, you can get addicted to sex. Will you? No, most people don't. But it can be. Most people don't get addicted to alcohol. But about 1 in 10 people in the population is at risk to get some level of alcoholism. Because alcohol is an addiction. If it addicts you, it has that effect on changing your sense of time. So things about gambling, and this includes people who are like day traders and things like that, crypto people, right? In and of itself, the following the numbers and the looking every day and all of that is the compulsion. How much detail are you taking in? How much do you pay attention to it? But then there is also the thing itself where it can, for some people, speed up or slow down your sense of time. The thing itself. A lot of people have that. Somebody would ask me about relationships. And can a relationship be addictive? I'm going to leave you with this. As I said, this, is an addiction a wound? Can it be healed with emergence? Is a compulsion a wound? Can it be healed with emergence? Not for today. Way too much. I gave you too much already. But, now then, let me add. Can a person have a love addiction? You know what? I'm going to leave that with you. What do you think? Based on how I've described the difference between compulsion and addiction, can you be addicted to a person? You certainly can be compelled to be with them. Yes, you can. But is it or is it not an addiction? I'm going to leave that with you. Okay. Hopefully you can see that this is one of those topics that's close to my heart, being that, that I'm a recovering alcoholic, and at this point I'm, about 3 months away from not having had any alcohol or drugs for 40 years. Imagine that? 40 years. I cannot imagine it. And I do know that a lot of what I'm teaching you, I owe a debt to all the people who helped me with my addiction. I owe a great debt. And indirectly so do you, because these things contain an awful lot of what helped me to get and stay away from that addiction. Anyway, enough for me right now, and I certainly hope that you are having an awesome day, and that you keep in mind that the density of what I've told you today, it's a lot, that you can go back, you can rewind it, you can throw things at the screen. But I just want to remind you, I'm so happy you're here. I am happy you're here.